You are alone. And you know it. It doesn't matter how many friends surround you, how many laughs you hear, or how many plans you invent to feel like you belong. When night falls and you turn off the light, the truth sits beside you and whispers in your ear, "You are not free. You think you are. You think every puff is an act of rebellion, a silent anthem against the void. But in reality, every puff is a contract you sign with your own shadow. That part of you that never sleeps, that smiles while tying you with invisible chains." Don't be scared yet, but I want you to think about this. When was the last time you truly chose? I'm not talking about choosing the music you listen to or the clothes you wear. I mean that deep choice, the one that defines whether you are the owner of your will or if you already handed over the keys of your mind to something that claims to give you peace. Tell me, was it freedom you were looking for or just a hiding place? Because what looks like refuge soon turns into a cell, and that cell has its walls painted with your justifications. Marijuana promised you relief, and for a time, it delivered. It made you laugh when there was no reason, gifted you creativity when you were empty, offered you calm in the middle of the noise. But what you didn't see is that while you celebrated, something in your unconscious was taking notes. Like a patient predator, your shadow watched, learned your weaknesses, and began weaving a net. Now, every time anxiety brushes your chest, every time boredom crawls over you, every time loneliness strikes, the net activates. You no longer decide, the habit decides. You think you smoke because you want to, but the truth is you smoke because you can no longer not do it. And here's the disturbing part. No matter how you disguise it, your unconscious knows. It knows when you make excuses. It knows when you say, "I could quit whenever I want." It knows when you repeat, "It's not that bad." Every excuse is a brick in the wall of your psychological prison, a prison that doesn't smell like rusty bars, but like sweet smoke and nightly rituals. The most sinister thing isn't the substance itself, but the illusion of freedom. Carl Jung warned, "What is not made conscious becomes destiny, and you are no longer choosing your destiny. It's the shadow behind every puff that chooses it for you." Do you notice? That pleasure is no longer the same. At first it was a fire that lit up the darkness. Now it's a fire that consumes the wood of your ability to enjoy the natural. Walks, music, hugs, silences. Everything feels tasteless, colorless, insufficient. Your brain has adapted to artificial dopamine peaks, and life without the drug becomes gray. And the worst part is that you know it. But you choose to stay silent. You choose denial. You choose to convince yourself that this is normal. You have become your own jailer, guarding a cell for which only you have the key. Don't get it twisted. Addiction isn't poison in the veins. It's a deformed mirror where you see yourself as free, when in reality you are chained. It is Jung's shadow pulling the strings from deep within, forcing you to justify the unjustifiable, to smile while you give up ground, to believe you control what controls you. Do you want the truth? You traded your freedom for a cheap illusion. You sold your ability to choose in exchange for smoke. But here's the most unsettling thing. You still think this is an exaggeration. Right now, while you hear these words, a voice inside you is looking for counter-arguments. "It's not that bad. Others use more. I still function. I can stop whenever I want." That voice isn't you. It's the shadow disguised as your conscience. It's the part of you that feeds on your doubts, that caresses you while it poisons you, that disguises itself as an ally, when in reality it's the executioner. Think about this. What would happen if today you decide not to light up? What do you feel in that instant? Restlessness, discomfort, emptiness. That is not freedom. That is dependence. True freedom doesn't tremble at the absence of a ritual. True freedom doesn't force you to negotiate with yourself every night. True freedom doesn't blackmail you with anxiety. The shadow knows this. That's why it keeps you blind. That's why it keeps repeating you're fine, that you deserve it, that you're in control. Because if you open your eyes, it vanishes. And here's the darkest paradox. The more you deny it, the stronger it becomes. The more you justify it, the deeper it digs into your unconscious. And the more time passes, the harder it will be to get out, because the shadow doesn't want you to leave. The shadow wants you trapped forever, believing you're enjoying yourself while your real life erodes slowly. Do you dare to look your shadow in the face? Do you dare to ask yourself how many of your decisions are yours and how many are hers? Because in that answer lies the difference between continuing to live as an unconscious prisoner or beginning the path toward a freedom that doesn't need smoke to exist. You've lived in that fog so long, you've forgotten what it was like to breathe clean air. And I don't just mean the smoke. I mean the mental space your attention used to occupy before the substance settled at the center of your life. Because what marijuana silently steals isn't just clarity, it's time. That limited resource you'll never get back. Think about it. How many hours, how many days, how many weeks have dissolved like ashes while you were stuck in the same routine? And while you convince yourself that it's just a moment to relax, life slides past you like a relentless river. What you let pass will never return. That is the most expensive bill of all. The truly dark thing is that you don't notice. The substance doesn't come violently. It doesn't bang on the door. It slips in softly, disguised as an ally, and starts reshaping how you relate to the world. What at first seemed like a pause becomes the only way you know to process boredom, loneliness, or pain. And slowly, your brain rewires itself. You no longer seek experiences. You seek escapes. You no longer desire growth. You desire numbness. Your whole life begins to organize around a ritual you swore you controlled. Here enters the true psychological horror. Jung's shadow doesn't just act in your dependency, it sabotages your dreams too. Because every time you choose immediate gratification, you silently kill the possibility of building something bigger. How many ideas died in your head before they were born? How many projects never moved past a sketch because it was easier to light up another joint? That's the trap. You think marijuana boosts your creativity, when in reality it robs you of the discipline needed to materialize it. What you imagine floats away because your shadow convinces you that dreaming is enough. And it isn't. The most unsettling problem isn't the substance itself, but what it does to your relationship with yourself. It teaches you to distrust your own strength. With each relapse, with each excuse, with each night you say, "Tomorrow I'll quit," your self-trust fractures a little more. You stop believing yourself. And when you stop believing yourself, you become a stranger in your own body. And here lies the wound almost no one recognizes. It's not the drug that destroys, it's the slow erosion of your identity. It's the moment you no longer know who you'd be without it, because the shadow convinced you there's no you without smoke. Do you realize how macabre this is? Dependence not only seizes your present, it colonizes your future. Because now you imagine life always with that crutch, as if it were an inevitable part of your story. And the more you accept it as natural, the deeper the wound grows. The shadow doesn't want you to question. It wants you to normalize. And while you normalize, you become more and more alien to yourself. But the most twisted thing is how the drug becomes judge and executioner. When you consume, it promises pleasure. When you don't, it punishes you with anxiety, apathy, with that emptiness that forces you back. It's a closed cycle, a game you always lose, because there is no victory possible when the board was rigged from the start. Marijuana makes you believe you're choosing, but in reality, it chooses for you, like a puppeteer pulling the strings of your will. And the worst part is, you applaud while being manipulated, because the shadow whispers everything is under control. Now, I want you to imagine something that probably makes you uncomfortable. Who would you be without that habit? Don't answer quickly, because if your mind blocks, if discomfort shows up, that's the evidence your identity is no longer free. True freedom should let you answer with clarity, but the shadow avoids it. That fear isn't a coincidence. It's the unmistakable sign you've given up too much. The cruelest part of all this is that the world keeps moving. Life doesn't stop to wait for you to resolve your inner war. While you justify, while you postpone, while you convince yourself it's fine, others build, others move forward, others take the places you could have occupied. And one day you'll look back and ask where the time went. The answer will be brutal. It went up in smoke, it went into excuses, it went into the shadow, and here comes an uncomfortable revelation. The opposite of addiction is not abstinence. It is awareness, because the shadow feeds on the unconscious, on what you deny, on what you hide under the rug. As long as you keep running from your discomfort, you'll be its prisoner. But if you dare to look, if you endure the discomfort of facing yourself without disguises, then a crack appears in the prison. And that crack is the beginning of true freedom. What no one ever told you is that the fight isn't against the substance, but against the part of you that hides behind it. Against that shadow that uses your insecurities as fuel, that disguises itself as relief to perpetuate your slavery. That is the real battle, learning to recognize your own inner enemy and having the courage to face it. And no, it won't be easy. The shadow will scream, tempt you, offer you 1,000 reasons to give up. But every time you unmask it, every time you say, "You are not my voice, you are my prison," you reclaim a fragment of yourself. Marijuana is not the monster. The monster is the reflection of what you gave away. The substance is only the stage. The true antagonist is that part of your mind you've let grow unchecked. And if you want freedom, you'll have to walk toward that reflection, even if it terrifies you, even if your whole being trembles, because only those who cross the shadow can claim the light. Do you want to know the most shocking part? That light looks nothing like the artificial pleasure you know. That light doesn't promise immediate euphoria or forced laughter. That light is quieter, deeper, more real. It's the power of feeling again without needing escapes. It's rediscovering life in its rawness and its beauty. It's understanding that purpose, as Jung said, isn't found in pleasure but in meaning. And meaning is never smoked, it is built. And you? Do you have the courage to face your shadow, or will you keep smoking to avoid seeing it? The scariest thing isn't the substance, nor even the dependence, but the emptiness that appears when you quit. That uncomfortable silence that opens when there's no smoke to cover it. Many can't stand that silence because there they face what they've been avoiding for years. Raw anxiety, naked insecurities, the pain they never learned to face. Cannabis became a curtain, and when you draw it back, what's behind is an abandoned stage full of ghosts you don't want to see. That's the real trap. It's not that you need the drug, it's that you're terrified of meeting yourself. And here's the sinister part. The same shadow that once convinced you to light up now whispers that without it you won't survive. That the discomfort is unbearable, that you don't have enough strength, that life without that filter will be unlivable. It's the cruelest lie you can believe because it robs you of access to your power. It makes you forget that inside you is something greater than the habit. The capacity to withstand discomfort, to feel the vertigo of the void and still move forward. What the drug hides isn't the pain. What it hides is your true resilience. But let's go deeper. Have you noticed that addiction not only changes how you see yourself, but also how you see others? You start surrounding yourself with people who validate your habit, who normalize it, who celebrate it. And little by little, you build an environment where no one questions anything, because everyone is stuck in the same dynamic. You think you found a tribe, but in reality, you found accomplices in your self-deception. And the most dangerous part is that when someone close breaks the pattern, when they decide to quit, you see them as a threat. That person becomes a mirror reflecting your slavery, and instead of inspiring you, you criticize or push them away. That's the proof you're no longer choosing your relationships. The shadow is deciding who makes you comfortable. And there's more. Marijuana, unlike other addictions, hides behind a cultural aura. It sells itself as something spiritual, creative, liberating. That disguise is perfect for the unconscious because it turns it into a prison disguised as a temple. You think you're opening your mind, when in reality you're shrinking it to one single stimulus. You talk about freedom, connection, calm, but what's behind is fear of facing the world without that crutch. It's an elegant, almost poetic self-deception that drags you further from authenticity. And the most disturbing thing of all is that, without realizing it, you start accepting a lower standard of life. You get used to living halfway, to postponing your goals, to letting time dissolve in rituals. You no longer demand from yourself what you could. You no longer fight for what you dream, because the shadow convinced you that this is fine. It's conformism disguised as well-being. And that conformism is what slowly kills your potential. What it steals from you isn't just days. It's the possibility of having been someone different. I want you to think about this with brutal honesty. How much of what you are today is truly yours? And how much belongs to the habit? How many of your thoughts, your decisions, your emotions are contaminated by that dependence? If tomorrow it disappeared from your life, would you still be the same person? Or would you realize that much of your identity was rented out to smoke? That's the question the shadow never wants you to ask, because the answer has the power to undo it. The unsettling truth is that the way out isn't grand. It's not a heroic gesture or a magical revelation. The way out begins small, enduring a day without the ritual, accepting the discomfort, resisting the temptation to invent excuses. And in that tiny act, in that almost invisible gesture, lies a revolution. Because every time you choose conscious discomfort over unconscious escape, you reclaim a fragment of yourself. It's a slow, wrenching process, but that's where you're reborn. Marijuana stole your ability to enjoy the simple, but life still holds that possibility. Only now, you'll have to win it back. And winning it back doesn't mean returning to the past. It means learning to live differently, embracing the emptiness, crossing the anxiety, accepting that true calm isn't bought with smoke. It's built with courage. The shadow doesn't want you to hear this because it knows that if you do, it starts losing power. But you're hearing it. And that is already the beginning of something the shadow fears more than anything: your awakening. Do you see? And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. The truly terrifying thing isn't living chained to a substance. The terrifying thing is reaching the end of your life and realizing it was never you who lived, but the shadow who lived for you. And here is where we reach the point almost no one dares face. Addiction is not the enemy, it's the messenger. Its presence in your life doesn't mean you're weak or incapable. It means there is something inside you crying to be heard. And instead of listening, you've silenced it with smoke. That's the hardest revelation. What you tried to bury is still alive, still asking for release, still banging from the depths of your unconscious. And the more you cover it, the louder it gets in the dark. It's not the substance that sustains your prison. It's the secret you refuse to face. Maybe it's the loneliness you've carried since childhood. Maybe it's the insecurity of not feeling enough. Maybe it's an old wound you never dared to name. Whatever it is, it's there, waiting for you to look. And here comes the twist. The drug was never the solution. It was just the disguise. The true act of freedom isn't quitting smoking. It's daring to see what you always avoided. It's opening that door inside yourself and listening to what your shadow has been screaming in whispers for years. If you made it this far, it's because some part of you already knows. You know the ritual isn't pleasure, that the relief isn't real, that the shadow has been using you as a puppet. And you also know the moment to decide isn't some distant tomorrow. It's here, in this precise instant. Freedom isn't postponed. It's conquered with the courage to choose differently now. Maybe your whole body will tremble. Maybe your mind will scream. Maybe the shadow will writhe. But that discomfort is proof you're stepping out of the cell. And if you cross it once, even for just a second, you'll have tasted the flavor of true autonomy. So here's a challenge. If you truly want to start freeing yourself, write this phrase in the comments and let it be recorded as a pact with yourself. I choose to see my shadow instead of letting it rule me. Write it, even if it hurts, even if your mind tells you it's useless. That gesture could be the beginning of a change you never imagined possible. And if this video stirred something inside you, if it made you feel that strange vertigo of facing yourself, subscribe. Because what's coming will unsettle you even more. But it can also save you from continuing to be a prisoner of yourself. This isn't a channel to entertain you. It's a channel to shake your unconscious, to show you the face you never want to see in the mirror. I'll leave you with a warning you may never forget. Tonight, when you light the joint, you won't be alone. The shadow will be there, watching how you choose. And maybe, for the first time, as the smoke dissolves in the air, you'll remember these words and ask yourself, who's really smoking, me or my prison? See you in the next video, if you dare to return.